Libya joined the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, in 1962, a year after Libya began exporting oil. Libya holds the largest amount of proved crude oil reserves in Africa, the fourth largest amount of proved natural gas reserves on the continent, and it is an important contributor to the global supply of light, sweet, low sulfur crude oil, which Libya mostly exports to European markets. Libya's hydrocarbon production and exports have been substantially affected by civil unrest over the past few years. In 2011, Libya's hydrocarbon exports suffered a near total disruption during the Libyan civil war, and the minimal and sporadic production that occurred mostly consumed domestically. In response to the loss of Libya's oil supplies in the summer of 2011, the International Energy Agency coordinated a release of 60 million barrels of oil from the emergency stocks of its own members countries through the Libya Collective Action. Libya's oil production recovered in 2012, but it still remains lower than levels prior to the civil war.
Libya's production had increased for most of the previous decade, from 1.4 million barrels per day in 2000 to 1.74 million barrels per day in 2008. But production remained well below peak levels of more than 3 million barrels per day achieved in the late 1960s. Oil production in Libya from the 1970s into the 2000s had been affected early on by the partial nationalization of the industry and later by sanctions imposed by the U.S. and the UN that impeded the investment and equipment needed to sustain oil production at higher levels. EIA estimates that Libya's current effective production capacity is slightly below 1.6 million barrels per day. Effective production capacity is defined as the amount of production that could come back to oil markets within a year. Effective production capacity takes into account a permanent or prolonged production loss to the degradation of shut-in oil fields and damages to operational components that would take longer than a year to repair, which is dependent on the financial security and political situation. Some of Libya's production was compromised from the prolonged closure of oil fields during the 2011 conflict, but a vast majority of production was restored and restarted quicker than most industry analysis expected.
In 2013, Libya consumed about 223 BCF of dry natural gas, or slightly more than half of what the country produced. Libya exported the surplus of its production to Italy via the Green Stream pipeline. Natural gas production and exports have partially recovered since 2011 civil war, but still remain lower than pre-war levels. In 2011, natural gas exports dropped to 85 BCF, about 75% lower than the previous year. Prior to the 2011 civil war, Libya exported the natural gas via pipeline to Italy and in the form of LNG to Spain. However, Libya's LNG plant was severely damaged during the 2011 civil war, and Libya has not exported LNG since early 2011. Libya's capacity to export natural gas increased dramatically after October 2004 when the 370-mile Green Stream pipeline came online. The pipeline starts in Melita, where natural gas piped from onshore Wafa and offshore Bahr es Salam fields is treated for export. It runs underwater to Gela in Italy on the island of Sicily, and the natural gas flows onward to Italian mainland. The Green Stream pipeline is operated by Eni in partnership with NOC. It has an annual capacity of 8 billion cubic meters, according to the Energy Intelligence Group.
The future of Libya's oil production is limitless due to the many contributing factors. There is enhanced oil recovery, not surveyed land yet, and a growing economy. Enhanced oil recovery is important not only for the Libyan oil companies, but for all oil companies throughout the world. Enhanced oil recovery serves as a way to increase oil production by wells by very simple methods. Libya has also hundreds of square miles of land that has not been prospected that could thoroughly increase oil and natural gas production. Finally, the Libyan economy is on the path of growth. During the time of the Libyan civil war in 2011 and the mass protests of 2013, oil production was on an all-time low. Due to the decreasing protests and national chaos, many oil fields, pipelines, and ports are all able to be opened.